Cooper joins us right now from University Hospital. Charlie, what happened to that driver and that officer?
Yeah, unfortunately that driver did not walk away with his life, but after being hit by that driver and losing control of his vehicle, that officer was lucky enough to walk away with his life. Like I mentioned, unfortunately, that driver can't say the same thing, but take a look at these images and it's not hard to see why that's the case. That crushed in police vehicle and that truck that is slumped on a tree paints a clear picture as to exactly what happened. Police say that it happened around 11:15 when that driver barreled down Tupper Avenue last night, saw a police unit on South Cross, and instead of slowing down, he rammed into that patrol car. The officer spun out of control and hit a utility pole. Luckily, he walked away with no injuries. Meanwhile, the driver's car ricocheted off that police car and banged into a tree. Now, that driver was taken here to University Hospital, and sadly, Audrey and Barry, he lost his life and was pronounced dead right here. Back to you guys.
All right, thank you, Charlie.